Hi and welcome back to my channel. Please like and subscribe my videos if you want to make suggestions in the comments as to other videos you would like me to produce. So this one is about dampers again. I've made two videos previously. First one back at the beginning of the year when I had my first set of dampers changed. Just to recap, the reason why I changed my dampers in the first place was because I was unhappy with the handling, especially mid-corner where the back end would step out if it hit a bump due to the suspension travel being used up almost totally when going around the bend because the dampers were so soft. It gave a nice comfortable ride, but yeah, I wasn't happy with it at all. I haven't been happy with suspension in the last few cars, the last two Nissan Leafs either. They weren't great, but they were in some ways better than the MG and some ways worse. They were a lot more crashy and they were a lot more, it was more sporty in the Leaf because they were definitely stiffer. They were set up more for European roads, and so the steering handling was better than the MG. The MG was comfortable, but it wallows a lot. So my reasons for changing were to improve the ride quality and the handling and to stop the back end from stepping out. Back in February, I had the first set of dampers fitted by Vehicle Handling Solutions Limited. Andy and Alan came over and installed, or fitted I should say, a new set of front dampers and a rear set of dampers. And initially I was really happy with them because it transformed the car. It gave the car a lot more feel at the front end and a lot more steering feel, a lot more resistance on the steering. So when you turned the steering wheel, the car actually turned and there was no delay, which there is with the standard setup because they're a lot stiffer. And I'm talking about because it's a monotube design more than anything else. So they're a lot beefier, the front suspension. The rears were the same, and we noticed when we were road testing the car before we had the change that the rear suspension was being used up almost totally whilst going around a corner, which is why when you were going around a corner you'd use the suspension up because it had, while going around the corner because of the body roll, and then it hit a bump and then the back end would just step out of line. And it was not a pleasant experience. It felt like the car was going to just change directions on you or give you massive oversteer. It was not pleasant. And I didn't think I was driving the car particularly fast when that was happening either. It was very disconcerting. So anyway, they changed that and the handling was superb, especially at high speed. At 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, the car was absolutely amazing. It was just like it was on rails. However, at low speed, it had lost all its plushness. So every time it hit a ripple in the road or a pothole, it was very uncomfortable. It was a bone shaker. I lived with that for the first lockdown and then for a couple of months after. After discussions with Andy and Alan, we decided to change the front dampers, which was my second video, and that improves things a lot. But having lived with them for quite a while, it gave the car was pitching side to side and front to back a lot because we had the standard stiff setup with a slightly softer front, and the car felt unbalanced, and you could feel it just didn't feel right, and I was not happy with that setup. So I lived with that again for another couple of thousand miles or thereabouts, and back in September they came back and they changed all the dampers this time. They put on slightly firmer front and slightly softer at the back, and that brought back the plushness to the ride. Oh yeah, one of the things that I noticed from the July front softer setup was I lost the steering preciseness. It was not as direct as I'd had been before, which I really missed. And it was a lot more vague. That was because it was just a little bit too soft at the front end. They stiffened that front end up and they softened the rear end, so the car now feels balanced. In fact, the biggest compliment I can probably pay is that most of the time I don't actually notice the suspension now. Yes, it is on the sporty side compared to the standard comfort setup, but it doesn't react to potholes by crashing and banging into them like the standard suspension does. It just copes with them. The rebound is such that it just goes down and recovers quickly, but not too quickly. And the steering, because they stiffened it up at the front end a little bit more, has brought that feel back to the front end, and it inspires confidence. It has resistance, so that you turn the steering wheel and something actually happens. Whereas with the previous original OEM suspension and the second lot of front dampers, you turned it and eventually it sort of caught up with you because things within the suspension just weren't working together properly. Now it feels much more planted at all speeds. It's fine at motorway work, it's fine on fast A roads, and it's fine around town, but it is a little bit more harsher than the standard OEM setup around town. That is the compromise that I've had to make, and the only way you can eradicate that is by probably having an air suspension set up, which will cost an awful lot more money, and it's not worth it in a car of the MG ZS's ilk. It's a cheap EV. I've now driven about 2,000 miles on this latest setup, and I am overall very happy with it. As I said, there's no crashing and banging from the potholes. The precision is back with the steering due to the stiffness of the monotube, and it has a level of flushness which I didn't have before. The car reacts to steering input immediately. By the time the car had settled down from the steering input on the OEM dampers, you've gone round the corner. Whereas these, you turn the steering wheel and something actually happens immediately. There's no delay. This gives you a lot more confidence than with the standard OEM dampers. As I said earlier, the car feels balanced. It's on the sporty side of comfort, but that's the compromise of better damping. So the downside or criticism is that on some surfaces, the dampers at low speeds, around town type speeds, and certain bumps, ripples in the road surface, it feels like the car is pushing up, that the dampers are a little stiff. But on the majority of the roads I've driven, majority of the miles, motorways, fast A roads, challenging B roads, unclassified roads and town roads, the overall improvement in ride quality, comfort and precision far outweigh the compromise. I'm not a racing driver. I never have been, I never will be. I just like the car to go where I want it without any fuss, to be reasonably comfortable for my aging bones, and to not have to think about the suspension. Will it cope with that pothole or that road surface? It just does the job and you don't even have to think about it. So the issue I had with the suspension not reacting quick enough and to stop the back end from stepping out of line when it hits a bump mid-corner, and the crashing it when it went down a pothole, has all been eliminated. You can really feel the dampers working. The body roll is less. You'll never eliminate it with a high-sided, high-riding SUV. It's a car that was never designed to be a sports car. If you want something like that, look elsewhere. And I understand from my contacts that the facelift ZF suspension setup will be exactly the same as the standard one. So these will work on the facelift when it eventually arrives. If I change the car to the latest one with a bigger battery, as rumoured next year, well, we'll see. Time will tell. The dampers will just be a straight swap out. Okay, you want to know how much? Yeah, okay. So firstly, the guys at Vehicle Handling Solutions are going to offer the dampers in two stages. First, is a rear dampers only setup where they change just the rear dampers. Dead easy job to do. It's just a couple of bolts either side. You don't even need to put the car on axle stands or anything like that. It can actually be done with the car parked on the drive. This is something I have not tested. So it's sticking with the front standard OEM dampers, but with uprated rear dampers, and it should eliminate the problems at the back with the back stepping out of line. I also found that rear seat passengers on long journeys suffered a little bit of sickness because of the movement in the back of the car on the OEM springs. I've not had that complaint since they've been changed. At a guess, the stage 1 kit will cost in the region of £300 plus VAT. Maybe less, maybe a bit more, but it's probably in that sort of order. They're just waiting for Bilstein to give them final costings. As I said, I haven't tested this setup, and personally I wouldn't just stick to stage 1. I would want the whole car to be done, like I have done. If you're interested in that, speak to them. I'll put a link in the description below to their website where you can contact them and ask them about it. There may be an opportunity for somebody to speak to them about the dampers and fitting them to their car and testing them like I have been doing for the whole set. Stage 2, which is what I have, is the front and the back. Personally, I like this setup. Now, there are issues at the moment with getting hold of spring seats for the front dampers, but assuming all is good and they can be sourced at a sensible cost, then at a guess they will be in the region of £800 plus VAT for a set of 4 dampers using the OEM springs. If not, the spring seats handmade to fit the dampers, that will be prohibitively expensive, potentially adding 50% to that cost. So let's hope that they're able to source some spring seats for the dampers, and this is for the front dampers. Rear's fine, no problems at all. Then there's what I'm going to call stage 3. Some people have asked them for a lowering kit where the ride height is lowered and stiffened up slightly, I believe. The springs will be provided by iBark and will reduce the height all round by about 20 millimeters. This is not something I'm particularly interested in, as I like the current ride height. I don't want to reduce the ride height at all. For those of you who like the wheels to fill the wheel arches, this might be an option for you. I personally like the ride height that it's got at the moment. I find it easier to get in and out of the car. I don't want a lower car. In fact, this is one of the lowest SUVs I've had. My previous SUV was a lot higher and I almost had to climb into it. And that was actually raised by nearly 75 millimeters over standard. Anyway, going back to the lower dampers, they could actually improve the energy economy because you're running lower to the ground. There you have it. I think the dampers as they are on my car at the moment are probably in their final state, and so they will be setting those up for production, and it's just a case of getting the parts, specifically the spring seats for the front dampers. If you've got any questions, contact me or contact VHS direct. As I said, the link is in the description for contacting them. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this short video, and I'll speak to you again soon. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.